I cross-stitch. Like, a lot. How much? Well, here's everything I stitched in 2024. Let's go through it all. Before we start, I do want to warn you that this will feel very self-advertising because 95% of what I stitch is my own design. And yes, I do sell a lot of the patterns, and I will mention when they're free and when they're Patreon exclusives or whatever. But that's just what I stitch. I'm not trying to sell you anything right now. I just want to show you what all I stitched this year because I'm proud of it. I will go more or less in the order I stitched things. Keep in mind that some of these things were technically stitched in 2023, but I didn't release them publicly until 2024, so I'm counting them as this year. Similarly, there are plenty of things that I have stitched this year that I will not be releasing until next year, so those things will not be included. There are a few things that I stitched that were not my own design, and I will mention the designers where appropriate and link to them down in the description. Editing Siri here. I don't know what's going on with the audio quality in this entire video despite me having tested it before filming, but I'm not going to refilm it all. I have tried to edit it as much as I can to cut out background noise, but I'm sorry. All the disclaimers out of the way, let's go through everything. For my Patreon, I release 2 patterns a month. There will always be one original design and one fan art based design. On months that have 5 Saturdays, there's also a freebie design. That's how I end up with usually like 30 plus projects a year. And then of course there's personal projects. At the end of all this, I will also go through the other crafts that I did this year because I didn't do as much cross stitching as I normally do. In September, I moved, which means July and August were mostly packing, and September and October were mostly unpacking, and November was trying to sort my life back out. So there was a lot of months I didn't stitch this year. So, since I don't have a recap of 2023 for you, you'll just have to take my word for it. This is less than normal, and maybe next year we can compare. All right. So in January, I released actually 10 designs. The one that I actually stitched is this lunar dragon because it was the year of the dragon, but I actually released patterns for all the other zodiacs that I didn't have up yet. So the snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, pig, rat, and my own, the ox. But I haven't stitched those yet. I only stitched a dragon, so I'm only counting this as 1 this year. I have stitched the rabbit and the tiger for 2023 and 2022 respectively. For January, I also released as my fan art pattern this wingspan cover. If you're not familiar, this is essentially the cover to a board game called Wingspan. It's a wonderful little game. If you haven't played it, please go play it. It's available as a physical board game. It's available as a digital board game. It can be played single player or up to, I don't know how many players off the top of my head because I only ever play it 2-player. But it is very accessible. The digital version is awesome, and just play it. And then come back and stitch it. Okay, and then in February, I usually do like a New Year's type craft, but this year I did omamori, which are these little charms. I had done the frog charm beforehand, and I'll put a picture of that up here. But this year I added on to those by having a thread chicken charm. And this one is like for good lucky tools. They're supposed to be lucky charms. So, may you ever win at thread chicken, and these are double-sided. And may you always find your tools and have sharp needles. Cute little lucky designs. Fan art for February was this Genshin Impact, what are they called? The Aranara? I did do a lot of Genshin Impact stuff this year. I don't play the game as much anymore, but I love the art style. So it's hard not to be inspired by that. In March was a freebie month, so I released a free pattern, which was this Tetris Biscornu. This, I actually started stitching this. Oh, the button fell off. Well, the button is missing. I'm gonna post a picture of what it looked like while the button was still there. It probably got lost in my Biscornu basket. Anyway, I actually started stitching this like 8 years ago. Designed it, and I started stitching it, and then it got put in a UFO pile for like almost a decade at least. So I finally finished it this year, and I finally released it, and it's just a cute little Tetris mandala. So that was nice to finally get off of my UFO pile. The original design for March was one I'm really proud of. It is this dragon. So in 2023, I joined a readathon by Books to Ashes. She's a booktuber. You should go check out her channel. But she created a readathon where it's kind of like an RPG. You're like a D&D-ish based, but your character and everything is based on the books that you read. So the first thing we did is design a dragon based on the books we were reading that month. So based on the colors were chosen based on the color, the theme was based on what kinds of books. It's a whole thing. So this is my dragon. She's a small dragon, about the size of a large dog, and I love her. And this got me playing with beads, which is always a fun time. I don't play with beads enough. I should do that more, and I should do more dragons because I had a lot of fun with that one. What else did I do in March? March was when I released the Sims Sylvan tree. So if you've played Sims 4, you might recognize this tree. Getting the little details down here, like the mushrooms and moss and stuff, was fun, and the overall colors of the green, and tried to get more of a organic leaf shape. I really enjoyed it, and I do want to do more Sims ones. There's another one in here at the end of the year, but I do have a couple more that I plan to do next year, and I've done a few in the past. I've done the cow plant and the crystal fruit tree. Moving on to April, I released a pendibule. This is a fun little shape that I don't do often enough. It's also made out of a square. Rather than two squares put together like a Biscornu, it's one square folded. I also played with edging it with beads. And I believe this was stitched with color and cotton thread. No, this was the Gentle Art. No, this was made with Gentle Art threads, where I actually bought just a random assortment of the Gentle Art threads so that I could take product photos of my thread drop and bobbin labels. And I've had these for a while, so I decided that I should maybe design something. I ended up not using this blue and purple, but I did make this design to use the threads that I had so that I had an excuse to stitch with them. And now you have an excuse to try out the Gentle Art threads. I did, of course, include the DMC equivalents of those, so you can stitch those instead if you want. Almost forgot. In February, I also stitched a bunch of these little Mario minis for to help my friend Crafty Gurumi test her patterns. I will definitely link these down below, but they're in a whole assortment of Mario enemies on plastic canvas. I still need to turn them into like magnets or something. But I just love her style. I'm not usually much of a backstitch person, but they just have such a big impact on these that it's absolutely worth it. How she designs in such a small space is beyond me, but they always turn out so good. I highly recommend it. Her whole shop is basically just like minis. Well, that's not true. She has a lot of big projects as well, like the big Zelda tapestry. So minis to giant wall covering tapestries. There's no in between. April was also when I did the Genshin Impact Calla Lily. I have a whole series of video game flowers that I do in this kind of style, and eventually I want to get them all hung up together. I've been doing these in the pre-stretched squares, but I kind of wish I hadn't, because then I could just put them all in like matching frames or something, but we'll see. In May, a lot of things happened. So in May, every month I do a article on my website that my patrons vote on, and it's usually like a tutorial. Like February's was how to do a biscornu with a cotton bottom. It might be like how to make a pendibule or how to make your cross stitch into omamori. But for May, we decided to explore a new craft. So here is... I had picked up this little kit from a online thrift store, which is a little Hardanger kit. And so this is when I finally tried out Hardanger for the first time, and the whole thing is that you actually have to cut out part of your fabric, which is terrifying. I did it, and I keep meaning to come back to this and do it again, but I haven't yet because of the whole moving thing I mentioned previously. But that was a lot of fun. There's a whole video of that on my channel if you want to check it out. The other thing that happened in May was that the first Spellbound Stitches collaboration came out. It's no longer available. I will link down to it below so you can see all the different designers that was in it. But basically, a bunch of designers got together and we picked a color palette using Lessian Cosmo threads, and we all designed a pattern using the same palette. This was my design. A little cosmic potion. I played around with the colors a lot before getting them quite to line up, but that was fun. And then my original design for the month was this mushroom snail. I started playing this year a lot with the bolder black outlines. I don't know how I feel about that, but I am enjoying it for now. And this was actually also designed with Cosmo threads in mind, although I did include the DMC equivalents as always. And then the other thing that came out in May for Mayshroom, obviously we have the snail mushroom for Mayshroom, and this is also when I released the mushrooms of Tamriel. So I stitched the short version. There's actually, the pattern comes with 3 more mushrooms from Morrowind, so that you can have either the short version or the long version, depending on whether you want it to match the mushrooms of Hyrule that I did. Because I stitched that one before Tears of the Kingdom came out. So when I had to add the 3 extra mushrooms to Tears of the Kingdom, I also made sure that this pattern could match either the Breath of the Wild one or the expanded one. So you can have 12 mushrooms or 16. Up to you, and you can of course rearrange these if you liked some of the other 3 better. You can move them up, what have you. But this was one I had a lot of fun with. I do want to go back and do floral version of these, so we'll see. Or maybe some other mushroom themed ones, like maybe a mushrooms of Dragon Age. How many mushrooms are in that? I don't know. I need to do some research, obviously. Moving right along, in June was a freebie month. So I released this little Monstera leaf, which was a fun excuse to play with variegated threads, and then I just turned it into a little fabric tray that sits on my desk and holds my things. For now it will hold the Crafty Gurumi minis so I don't lose them. And over there. The other thing I released in June was when I started my Fruit Biscornu series. I'm using this one as a pin cushion, obviously, but it's a little Biscornu with lemon lime themed. Again, I was really pushing into the dark bold outline on these, and you will see that in a couple more Biscornu for the year. But I really like how this turned out, and I plans to do a whole series of fruit Biscornu, so look forward to that. Another Genshin Impact for June. This time, the Dendrobium. Sorry, I keep looking over at my list so I don't forget any. But this is another plant from the game Genshin Impact, and even if you don't play the game, they're just cool looking florals that you could put on your wall if you wanted. July is Art Fight for me. And Art Fight, if you're not familiar, is a website, artfight.net, where every July, for the entire month of July, a bunch of artists get together and draw each other's characters. So you can upload your characters, other people can come and draw them, you can draw their characters, or you can draw somebody else's characters, whatever inspires you. It's just a big bag of characters for you to choose and draw from. So those got shipped off to their characters' owners, but I did manage to get 2 done this year. I was too busy in July. Usually I try to get like 5 or 6 done. But since they were already shipped off, here I will post a picture of the 2 that I did this year. But I did, of course, still release 2 whole designs in July, so let's go over those. We have this fun little exploration of variegated threads, where I did little dinosaurs in space. The product photos I released of them hooped. Obviously, they are not currently in a hoop. I reuse that hoop constantly for photos, so I just don't store them that way. Also did this Black Lotus from Magic the Gathering. This is actually one that I tried to design several years ago, and I could not get it to look right. Just like trying to get the look of the original Black Lotus card and the colors was just way too difficult with DMC threads. And this time I tackled it as more of a cartoony version, and I leaned more heavily blue, obviously, and I think it turned out so much better, and I'm glad I revisited it. Add to my pile of nerdy florals. In August, that was another freebie month. So for that, I released a set of symbols, which are from the game Vampire the Masquerade. So I did the Meets, the Gangrel, and Toreador. So with these kinds, I try to finish them a couple of different ways and play with different types of threads so that you can see what you can do with them. So this one I just did a black outline on some hand-dyed fabric. For this one, we used a variegated red. You can kind of see it's more of a subtle variegation. And I finished it as a pendant. And for this one, this variegation is a lot more busy, and I finished it on black plastic canvas, and that's how that turned out. So those are just the 3 I stitched. I have a whole set of those symbols over on my Ko-fi, which is where I post all my freebies. I also released another Biscornu, another of the fruit Biscornu, this time strawberry kiwi, which is probably one of my favorite fruit combinations as flavors. And I tried to use the same tealish fabric and the same bold black outline so that these would work together as a set. And I do plan to do other fruit ones like I mentioned earlier, but that it's going until I run out of this swirly fabric. What else did I do in August? Oh, the last Genshin Impact floral, I promise, is this Jinjing flower. And I really wanted to do this because I love the heart-shaped leaves and how those turned out. I should not have stitched this on oatmeal fabric because the white flowers kind of blend in there, but I would want them to match The other ones I had already done, all on these pre-stitched canvas squares, so kind of needed it to be on that same fabric, so I did it anyway. Probably the last Genshin Impact floral I'll do for a while, if ever. Just because they don't sell very well and they were mainly doing it for myself, and I've already done all of my favorites. So I'm good for now. In September, I did another Biscornu because I friggin' love Biscornu. This time not fruit-based, but I stuck with the bold black outlines nonetheless. I decided to do pumpkin spice themed Biscornu. So I have all of the little spices, star anise, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, cardamom, quartz apparently. Why is there stuff in here? Ginger, and of course some pumpkins and a little pie. It really annoyed me that all of the spices in pumpkin spice mix are brown except for these cardamom pods. So to balance it out, I did a little pumpkin pie across from it so that I could put some white to kind of balance. But I really like how this turned out. I do want to do other spice blends like this, but I don't know what to do for them exactly. The only one I could kind of think of the top of my head, and I might still do, is a taco seasoning mix, which I think would be really cute, but it'll probably be a while before I get to that. In September, I also released this Greg. Again, I think I put this in a hoop for my product photos, but currently I just have it stored like this in a accordion folder. This is Greg from the game Conker's Bad Fur Day, if you haven't played. It's a really cute little scene, and I love the game, so I had to do it. That's something that's been floating around in my brain since then. October was another Spellbound Stitches month, so again, got a bunch of people together, we picked a color palette, and we all designed something using the same color palette. The hard part this time is that we didn't have black because we had already used it in the first collaboration, and we didn't want to reuse colors, so I came up with this cat, this cute little cosmic cat. And the reason that it's completely surrounded in grass and it's wearing a hat and everything is because I designed it so that you could not stitch the brown cat and you could make it whatever color fabric you wanted. So I will post a picture here of what it looks like before I stitch the cat. And that way I kind of worked around the not having black thread and not being able to do a black cat like I wanted. The original design in October was this cute little pastel cauldron, which I finished as just a flat ornament. I really like, again, these bold black outlines and like simple designs, so I probably will make more of these. In fact, there's one more for November that I'll show you here in a moment. Kind of just leaning into simple little designs. I keep looking over here, and that's because that's where the visual is on my computer, so I can see.
I don't have an answer for that.
It's where I can see what's on screen so that I can make sure that it's in frame. If you're wondering why I keep looking over there. Sorry, I'm not a professional YouTuber. This is not what I do for a living, obviously. Anyway, I really like how this turned out, and I do enjoy making these little flat ornaments. So always expect a couple of those each year. The other thing I made was for my fan art for the month. I actually made a much larger piece than I usually do. I did a band sampler, or ugly Christmas sweater, depending on how you look at it. And this is based on Dungeons and Dragons. So we have all the different classes. We have, of course, a dragon and some dice, chests and keys and stuff, potions up here, and then just some kind of little filler designs to create a band sampler. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while, and it all gives me an excuse to play with variegated threads, so I did. In November, It was another freebie month. And I hadn't stitched anything from Stardew Valley in a while. If you don't know, I wrote the Stardew Valley official cross-stitch guide. But because the publisher limited me in how many pages I could have, there's a lot I had to cut out. Like I couldn't do all of the houses and like the wizard tower, and I couldn't do all the fish like I wanted, or have all of the other villagers, not just the marriage candidates. So instead, I'm slowly stitching them now. I started off with Sandy because it's a nice, simple color palette. My camera is washing it out quite a bit here, but you know, it was nice to revisit Stardew Valley after completely burning myself out, stitching just the entire freaking book in less than a year. So that's why I haven't stitched Stardew in a bit, but I do hope to come back to that. But it's time that I get around to stitching some of the others as well. So hopefully we'll see more of those next year. What else came out in November? November was this pastel cornucopia. Again, like I mentioned, the bold back outlines, and I had it matching the cauldron from earlier, so kind of starting a series there. Not the same colors, but we added some additional ones, but still tried to keep them very samey. November's fan art was a gift card stocking. So last year I did one with Mimikyu. This year I did Gengar, but I stitched them on plastic canvas and then I backed them with felt. And that allows you to put a gift card in there and hang it on your tree. It's an ornament and it's a gift card holder. It's really cute. I like it. I will probably do another one next year. I'm just warning you now. For December, I did another Biscornet, this time gingerbread themed. This one, I used the tea-stained Ada that I did a while ago. I have an article on my website on how I tea-stained this fabric. And I did all of the stitching in Moulin Étoile. I don't know how to pronounce French. The sparkly one. So I had a lot of fun with that. You can barely see the sparkle on camera, but it's there, I promise. And then the last December one technically isn't out yet because I think I might be releasing this before it gets released. So if you sat all the way through this video, you get a sneak peek because it's going to be this Sims UFO fruit. Really random for December, but it's that weird time of year because it's being released on the 21st. So anything I release is it's too late to be stitched for Christmas and it's too early to be stitched for like spring. So it's just whatever other random ideas I had in my brain. And this is continuing the Sims plant series. So along with the Sylvan tree earlier in the year, we have one more Sims plant. And lastly, I have a work in progress. This is a stitch along Midnight Whispers that I started by the Urban Stitches. I obviously haven't finished it, but this is what I've been working on the side. Hopefully I'll be able to make more progress next year because I didn't do a lot. That is everything I stitched this year. Here is my Ort cauldron for the year. Here's all of my Orts. You can see all sorts of colors in there. A lot of stitching. A lot of stitching. So now, let's talk about other crafts I did, because I don't just do cross stitch, although it is a big part of my life, obviously. I actually learned a few different crafts this year, including that Hardinger I showed you earlier. Not cross stitch, but it does have a couple of cross stitches in it, so I counted it as cross stitch. If you're not interested in other crafts, that is fine. Thank you very much for sticking around, and I will see you in the next video. But for the rest of you, let's talk about what else I got done, because it feels like I didn't cross stitch as much as I usually do this year, which is ridiculous considering it's been like an hour of me rambling at this point. But what else did I do? I finished a cardigan that I started last year. It's up in the closet, so I don't have it with me, but it's a picture of it here. Crochet. I also sewed a Gengar plushie for my partner. That's up in his office, so I will again post a picture of it here. That was a fun little project. I did some grime guards. I did this butterfly grime guard, which I'll post a picture of, which I ended up doing a giveaway for. That was part of a tutorial that I made, so I'll post a link to that tutorial down below. But I did that grime guard, and then to bring this back out, I also did this grime guard, which is actually an English paper pieced project, all made out of little hexagons. And I actually have a whole video on how I made that here on the channel. So that happened this year. That was February, basically. June, yes, June, because I didn't get much done in April and May. But in June, I went on a floss adventure. So there's a whole video series on my channel about my floss adventure. Basically, I challenge people to try some new crafts, all using the same embroidery thread that we used for cross stitch. And I ended up learning 4 different crafts. So I started off learning tatting. Here's just like a little snowflake, I guess, and then like a little clover. All done using shuttle tatting. That was some great fun. I also did some darning. I don't have anything on my desk to show you for that, but I repaired some socks that I had and an old shirt that I had. That was a lot of fun. I have no idea where my Speedweave loom is. I tried looking for it when setting up for this video, but it is somewhere. I don't know. I will find it eventually. The other thing I did for that project was learn crazy quilting. I put together this crazy quilted piece. That was a lot of fun. Just a patchwork of scrap fabrics, and then I embroidered all over it. Some sections have little buttons, some have sequins. I did some of my tatting ended up on here, and also a tiny little bit of darning. Basically learning a bunch of different things. And I turned it into this little sewing companion. So normally I would have thread spools on here. This allows you to put scissors in it. And then I also tried out some hand embroidery, so not cross stitch for once, but just straight up embroidery, and I embroidered these little clovers. And that was a cool little project that I ended up using as a travel kit when we moved, because that was a 3-day road trip. And I'll show you what project I worked on there in a minute. That was most of June, was figuring out this project. The other thing I did do in June, though, is finish a blanket that I started last year. It's this hexagon blanket. June was mostly piecing things together and adding a border. So let me back up so you can see the full thing. Most of it. Okay. It's a blanket. What do you want? I just ran over it with my chair. That was finally finished. In July, because I had been doing so much crochet on that blanket, at some point this year, my partner decided he was going to learn crochet, and in secret, he went out and bought a Woobles kit. And he started working on it, and he got most of the body done, and then just kind of gave up. He needed help. So I used the same pattern to make a little version of my own. I added the little tongue blep. So I just used scrap fabric to put this together so that I could show him the rest of the way. This was his. He had little whiskers. So I didn't have any more safety eyes, so I just stitched my own eyes. But I made this one in order to teach him how to do the little additions and so on, the different parts, and this is the one he made. And now they live in my office. That was cute. In September was my road trip. That's when we moved. And so I had some small crafts that I had with me that I could practice. Mostly did some micro crochets. I did a little snowflake. It really needs to be blocked. Flower. And then with some crochet thread, a tiny star, and an even tinier little flower. I don't know that I will do a whole lot of micro crochet in the future. Here's a glow-in-the-dark star. Those were a fun little thing to do while on my road trip. I also did some paper piecing, but I'll show you that a little bit later. In October, we were still kind of settling into the new house. We'd been there like a month. And I picked up a how-to knit kit. I haven't done knitting before. This is my first time. I learned a whole new craft. First thing it had us do was this little bunny. And these are knitted using 8mm needles. That's the ones that came with the kit. And it started you off by just doing the one, I guess, knit stitch and making this little bunny. And then it teaches you how to purl, and it has you make some fingerless gloves. Actually just a tube sewn together. So I did those. And then the last project I had you do was a hat. So I made my first knitted hat. I enjoyed that so much that I went on to crochet another hat, or knit another hat. And this was my first experience with color work. I had a lot of fun with it. I made a little Tetris hat. It doesn't quite fit me. Yes, I did meet gauge. It's just not long enough. So I probably should have added another couple of rounds, but you know, it works. What else did I make? We've already discussed how much I love Biscornu, right? So I decided that I was going to try making Biscornu from other crafts. So I crocheted 2 little granny squares and put them together into a little crochet Biscornu. So that was cute. It just kind of sits on my desk. I also crocheted this little bat. Again, I don't have safety eyes, so I just kind of like French knotted the eyes on, which is fine. I also crocheted this little Cthulhu from a kit from Crochet Box, I think it was. Cthulhu. I also did the Mothman from that same company, Crochet Box. It's basically the exact same body and wing pattern as Cthulhu, just with a few different details. And then following that same, I'm going to crochet a Biscornu. I also knit a Biscornu. One's a little bit larger, but we have a little knit Biscornu. And then the last thing I'm going to show you, this is the project I started like 2 years ago. English paper piecing, and then I worked on it some more during the road trip, and then I finally finished it just last month. November, and I have not done anything with it. I did take the papers out, but I plan to turn it into like a large pot holder, I guess. So that's that, but at least it's finally the top is finished. If you have any ideas of what I can make with this besides a pot holder, feel free to let me know. It'll probably be a while before I get to that. So that's a lot. I did a lot of crafting this year, despite moving and spending several months just packing my stuff. I have a lot that I still want to do next year. I will be doing the Choose Your Floss adventure again next year, so I plan to learn at least a couple new crafts. I will of course continue my cross-stitching habits in that I will be releasing at least 2 patterns a month, sometimes 3. I do hope to do a little bit more personal cross-stitching this year because I do enjoy stitching other people's designs as well. Not only do I learn a lot from them, but also I can just kind of turn off my brain for a bit and stitch. So there's that. I have some crochet plans. I actually started this blanket. Not done yet, but it's making progress. I doubt it'll be done by the end of the month, so I'm not including that in 2024's finishes, but I did start it, so it is there. I do hope to do more knitting this year. Maybe redo this hat in a way that fits me. And that's it for now. Thanks for hanging out with me while I rambled for however long this video ends up being. I hope you found it at least interesting what all I got up to this year. Or maybe you just wanted something to listen to while you worked on your own projects. Let me know what you were working on during this video. I will link down below my Patreon and my Etsy and all that. If any of those cross-stitch projects are ones you were interested in, you will find them there. All of the free designs that I release get posted on my Ko-fi. There's a whole bunch of them. And again, every time there's 5 Saturdays in a month, you can expect a new freebie. I will, of course, also link my website because I do a lot of creating for that. It's all full of tutorials and articles centered around cross-stitch. And I do my best to provide what questions people are asking in the community, provide answers. So if you have suggestions for things I should cover, let me know. I work better in a text-based medium, which is why I primarily do website articles. Though I will be trying to incorporate more videos next year. If you'd like to see a more in-depth look at some of the projects I made this year, such as the English paper piecing grime guard or my floss adventures, feel free to check out the other videos on this channel. If you'd like to know where I came from, like what got me started stitching and my journey here, check out that video. Otherwise, I will see you next time. But whatever you decide to do, keep creating.